Hello, hello. I'm gonna wait maybe another minute before we can start. Yeah, I think we could get started. Welcome everybody. I'm hoping you all had a great day so far. Here in Europe, it's about 4:30 p.m. So probably the lighting on the camera, if you can see me, will change, but it's okay. I'll get started on how gamers became cybercrime's favorite target, which is essentially the results of the research blog analyzing more than 50,000 Infostealers infections. Here's me, cyber threat intelligence researcher, which is basically a big term to say I'm a data scientist applied to cybercrime data. I have a math and criminology background, so obviously loving data science because it has all shapes and colors. A little agenda for today's briefing. First, a little intro on what an infostealer is so we can get all on the same page. Then the two dimensions of infection, and then I'll detail the ecosystems of each infection. So the gaming ecosystem, the cost and fame problem, the protection paradox, and then I will conclude on some key insights, basically. So let's get on the same page of what is an infostealer. It's basically a piece of malware which is hungry for data. So how does the infection happen? Usually the user downloads a malicious payload, it executes on the compromised device, and then it will grab anything that could be valuable to the threat actor. So credentials, crypto wallets, sometimes even picture from the device or browsing data. The data is then exfiltrated through a command and control infrastructure, and then individual logs are packaged together into a nice little bundle before they are distributed on Telegram channels. What is inside a stealer log? Well, essentially the whole numerical identity of the user of the compromised device. You can have the system's info, like the hardware and the software. You have all the passwords from the browsers of the user. You have a screenshot, which is really interesting because it shows you what the user was doing when it was infected. And then you have cookies with the Chrome profiles, and then you have the files on the compromised device. So we had more than 50,000 stealer logs. And when we looked at the screenshots, we were able to get the infection stories. So how they were infected. Here you can see, basically the infection was about a download of Adobe Photoshop. Or here, sometimes you can have a screenshot of a YouTube video. And if we read the name of the YouTube video, then you can see it was a Fortnite hack mod menu. So we did not only have 50,000 stealer logs, we had 50,000 stealer logs infection stories. And when we began to read most of them and analyze them, we realized infections were multidimensional and they had two different dimensions. The first one is the targeted entity. The targeted entity is what software, brand name, or game the malware is basically hiding behind. So here, the malware was masquerading as an Adobe Photoshop 2024. In the other example, the targeted entity is Fortnite. So the malware was masquerading as Fortnite to be installed on the computer. We found 6 different types of targeted entity. The first one was games, which is pretty self-explanatory. In games, we found something like Roblox, Minecraft, or even Fortnite, usually pretty famous games. The second type of entity we found were essential softwares. They're basically operating systems, office productivity tools, or for document creation. In this, we found stuff like the Office suite or anything that could be Microsoft related, essentially. Then the third type of targeted entity was system and utility, and it's again self-explanatory. So something that's useful for you, like WinRAR, we had some video downloaders or even internet download managers. We also had creative software. So those are usually brand names like Adobe, anything that's Adobe related, like Photoshop, After Effects. We also had Filmora and then FL Studio, to give a few examples. The fifth type of entity we had were mobile related. So for example, iTunes or anything that's a utility, but for your cell phone. And the last basically encompasses any software that's related to privacy and security. So we had antiviruses, cleaning utilities, and even VPNs. The second dimension we had in all these infections was the claim functionality. The claim functionality is basically what the malware is telling you will do for you regarding the targeted entity. So here we have Adobe, and it's claiming to provide you with a cracked version of the Adobe software. Here for Fortnite, it's basically claiming I'm giving you a mod menu for Fortnite. We found many claimed functionalities, but the top 5 is here. We have cracks, essentially providing you a free way to get the software. You have a version, or in the infection story, it's a very specific version of the software, like here, After Effects, multilingual v2.9.3. We also had a lot of activation bypasses where basically the malware is claiming that it's providing you with an activation key for free for a very famed software. In fourth, we had a gaming specific claim functionality, which are cheats, basically illegal performance enhancer. So here for Counter-Strike Global Offensive 2 is a WALAC cheats. And then lastly, again, very gaming specific is a mod menu. It's basically a gaming experience enhancer, so better visuals or a better experience. And if we look at this way with 2 dimensions, it's starting to look like a trade offer from the side of a threat actor. From the side of a user, you see it not as a trade offer, but simply as an offer, because it's offering you to provide you with the entity and a claimed functionality, like a free Adobe or a WALAC cheat for CSGO. On the side of the threat actors, it's totally different because they know what the user will receive is probably a software that won't work, but the threat actor will receive all the user's information. So it really is kind of comical when you look at it with those 2 dimensions in mind. When we began to analyze with this in mind, we saw some differences between the targeted entity and what techniques were used to basically spread them and infect the most people. The first thing we noticed was the gaming ecosystem has a unique tailoring from threat actors to the gaming community. So game-related infections represented more than 41% of the sample. And top games were GTA, Roblox, Valorant, CSGO, Fortnite, and Minecraft. The choice to target those games is not something that's idiotic, because those games are gateways into gaming for people of all ages. They are pretty accessible, relatively simple, and some of them even have graphics that are suitable for even younger audiences. So targeting those types of famous or popular games actually ensures that you can have a wide pool of potential victims. When we started to look at the claim functionalities, we saw three that were very, very specific to the gaming community, and that really resonated with what the gaming community is focused on. Gamers are usually focused on two things, which is the competitive edge, basically performing well and playing at a high level. And the second is the aesthetic look. Usually gamers like to have something visually pleasing. And those three claim functionalities, which are performance cheats, aesthetic add-ons, and mod menus, are responding exactly to those concerns from the gaming community. Performance cheats and mod menus answer to the performance, basically, and experience concern of the gaming community. And it works so well to infect people because enhancements and modifications are usually deemed illegal by the publisher of those games. But since it's illegal, you don't have a verified source to get safe modifications and enhancements. And this creates a space for threat actors to enter and to infect people with enhancements, modifications, and cheats that would be laced with malware. And when a user downloads the mod menu and it doesn't work, usually the user typically assumes it's faulty and moves on to just another one, not suspecting any malware infection. And that's why it works so well. The second thing at play here is the economic aspect of the aesthetics add-ons. Because those games usually have skins, which are different visuals for characters and weapons, but they are paid for. So you have to pay to get those visuals. But many of the younger audiences, or even in the gaming community, lack the means or even the will to pay for them, but they still want those visuals. So they will go to free workarounds to avoid the cost, but still get the visuals. And those are free, just skin swappers, so you still get the visuals on your device. But if it's free, usually there's an ick. An ick here is usually you get infected with Infostealer. This unique tailoring from the threat actors to the gaming community has rendered the gaming as the perfect hunting ground for threat actors. So much so that roughly 2 out of 5 people in the study were infected by a gaming-related file. The second thing I want to talk about concerns 3 types of targeted entity: the essentials, the system and utility, and the creative software. And all of them had the same problem, which was leveraged by the threat actor, and it's what I named the cost and fame problem. If we look for the essentials, everything is basically related to Microsoft in the top 3. Then, for 15% more of infections, you have well-known brand names like Internet Download Manager, Winrar, or even YouTube video downloaders. And then in the creative section, a bit less than 15%, we have again famous brand names like Adobe, Filmora, or even FL Studio. The common denominators in all these infections that are highly efficient is the targeting of a main software, which is a mainstream one. It's very famed, it's known globally. In the same way as games, if it's known globally, that means you have this much people aware of it and this much people potentially falling victim to the trap you lay with that name. And that's a really interesting social engineering techniques, because if you target a mainstream software, you ensure a large pool of potential victims. So that was the fame aspect of the cost and fame. Now the cost aspect. Usually, when it's a mainstream software, it's famous, but it has a costly license, sometimes above $100. So users will usually tend to have cost-saving tendencies and will try to get a free alternative. Obviously, the Office Cracked has an enticing promise. You get the same software for no cost. But again, the no cost often has a price, and it's your data. Here, threat actors prey on users' willingness to bypass those legitimate licensing fees at the cost of their very own security. The third technique, or more strategy, I should say, was the protection paradox, and this concerned the privacy and security type of targeted entities. The privacy and security targeted entities were responsible for 1.7% of infections, which is quite low compared to all the other ones we saw. In the top three of types of software inside the category, we had cleaning utilities such as CCleaner. We had antiviruses. They were very well-known names like Avast or Arabytes or anything. And we also had very well-known VPNs such as NordVPN or others. In this category, you could also see some spoofers and other utilities related to quote-unquote privacy. This type of entity is basically showing us that we have a very perverse strategy here, which is to use the software that's supposed to protect the users and turn it against the users themselves. So when the user downloaded those cracked antiviruses and VPNs, they ended up installing the very threat they wanted to protect themselves from. And why it's so effective? It's because threat actors exploit two very human things we have when we think about security. The first is the urgency of a situation in which the user find itself when you think your computer or your device was compromised. Usually you act very rapidly because you're panicked and you believe your systems are at risk, so it's pretty much founded. The threat actors were really smart because they associated with this with the trust we have in security products. So if you combine those two, it's a very lethal but kind of perverse strategies to infect some users, really. To conclude, I want to give you a very simple insight, but a very important one, is that all of what I showed you is not rocket science. It's basic social engineering, and threat actors rely on those simple psychological tactics because they simply work so well. They don't want to pain themselves with sophisticated exploits if they aren't needed, because people are just so easily manipulated, or because the environment is so prone for those kind of traps that it works so well without much effort, like the gaming community. And those simple tactics can be summed up in three key insights. First, they target mainstream software and games. This works so well because if you target something mainstream, then many people know it, and then you're most likely to have many victims. The second point is to exploit users' cost-saving behaviors. It's inherently human to want to save money, or at least not spend it too outrageously. And so usually when you're human, you're going to first try to find a free or lower cost alternative, even if sometimes it's at the cost of your very own security. The third one is that threat actors succeed so well because they tailor the threats to the ecosystem targeted. The best example is simply the gaming ecosystem. They exploited the focus, the competitive edge, and visual focus of gamers, and they created three claim functionalities that ended up driving the infections of gaming-related targeted entity through the roof making it a really efficient way to infect people. I think that pretty much sums up the whole presentation. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer to the best of my capabilities. And thank you so much for your attention.